Okie doke. Well, welcome everybody. I hope you're having a good Wednesday, and thanks for joining us today on this workshop on the introduction to birding. Just a little bit of background. My name's Kevin Allen. I'm a professor in the Department of Natural Resource Ecology and Management at Oklahoma State University. I also work very closely with the 4-H program and doing outdoor recreation and natural resource things. So forestry, fisheries, wildlife, camping, all those sorts of things. So, well, again, I'm glad you're here today to talk about introduction to birding. Is there anybody that is currently a birder or does any bird watching? Okie doke. Well, this should be a good start for us then. So we're going to start with a little bit of trivia about birding. Bird watching is one of the largest and fastest growing leisure activities in the world. It continues to grow annually. And lots of people do lots of different things, different levels of birding, from beginners to very, very experienced people. Bird watching is second only to gardening as a favorite leisure activity. So gardening is number one, and then birding, which seems kind of crazy. It's the number one spectator sport in North America. It's larger than NASCAR. Most people don't believe me when I say that. And it's estimated that 80 million plus people enjoy viewing birds at their backyard feeder, to those that go on extensive trips around the world just to see birds that they haven't been able to see before. But regardless of your level of involvement in bird watching, it does provide different levels of opportunity, as well as lots of economic benefits to our gross national product, if you want to say that. According to the Fish and Wildlife Service, birders contributed $36 billion to the U.S. economy in 2006. So that's a lot of money. That's 36 billion with a B. Many people get into bird watching not just to, they start out with the idea, they don't want to become a bird watcher, but they see birds in their backyard and they want to be able to identify them, figure out what kind of bird it is. Or, you know, maybe someone hands them a pair of binoculars and points out a beautiful bird for them to look at it, and they get hooked and they want to learn more. So why birding, especially as a 4-H project? Number one, for me, I love to get kids outside. I think it's important that we get outside and not be in front of the TV all the time or in front of our phones, but just to get outside. It's also a neat way to spend time with your family. I know some of you might not want to spend time with your family all the time, but it is cool to do this as a family group and just enjoy each other's company. It helps us to understand and appreciate our natural world. Helps you to understand the different ecoregions that we have in Oklahoma and in our neat state, and to understand why birds are where they are, or just even if birding isn't your thing, but you want to learn more about the state and where our trees grow or our grasses grow, things like that. It helps us to understand that. And it also helps with those life skills that we talk about in 4-H all the time. Now, you might go, not really too important, but really bird watching helps with decision making, with goal setting, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, record keeping, all kinds of neat skills that we can do with birding. Whoop, went too fast. Sorry about that. So just imagine you're sitting in your backyard looking at the feeder, if you have one, or a water, or you just see a bird fly up and you see this beautiful red bird. And you're going, well, is it a cardinal? Is it a summer tanager? Is it a purple finch? How do you know? What do you look for to make sure that you've correctly identified that bird that you're seeing? So at first, bird watching can seem frustrating. You see lots of red birds or yellow birds, and you're going, man, I just don't know what all those birds could be. it gets a little bit confusing, and like I said, can be a little bit frustrating at first. But once you get the basics down, that process becomes easier and easier all the time of being able to identify what bird you're seeing. Bird watching actually involves sorting through clues to arrive at a bird's identity. So you see that red bird, but distinguishing between a purple finch and a summer tanager and a cardinal, there's certain things that you can look for, and it's not always color. Color, it can be a little bit deceiving at times because birds change colors during the season. But when you learn some of those basics, it makes it a lot easier. And it's really that process of elimination. So we use dichotomous keys. This is a very simple one. So you see something in the sky. Is it a bird? If it's a bird, yes, then it's a bird. If it's not a bird, what is it? Well, it could be a plane. Is it a plane? Yep. If not, is it Superman? But once you gain confidence and experience, you'll be surprised how easy it is to identify birds using visual characteristics. And the more you identify these birds, or more you work on identifying birds, the easier it becomes. So one of the first things we look at in bird identification is size. And size refers to the measurement of the bird from the tip of its bill. See if I can do this without going to the next slide. So on this crow, from the tip of the bill to the end of its tail. And size can be tricky sometimes. It's not always as easy as it thinks, because you'll see birds at a distance and they're sitting next to a rock. How big is that rock? You know, is it a big rock or is it a small rock? And, you know, or is it sitting on a limb? How far away is it? Sometimes birds fluff their feathers up, or they're hunkered down in the ground or in the grass. And it's easy to get fooled sometimes. But with a few tricks, again, you can use this as an ID key. Many bird watchers find it useful to compare the bird in question. So if you're looking at, say, a bird of this size, so you can compare it to, is it bigger? Is it the size of a house sparrow or a robin or a crow? And it really helps you distinguish in some of those species, especially, we'll show an example later on of the downy and hairy woodpeckers. Size is the big difference that we use to help distinguish those two birds. The next thing we look at is shape. And shape is a great characteristic for bird watching. Is it a thin body, or is the body heavier? Does it have a long tail or a short tail? Are the legs long or short? Is the bill long or short? Thick or thin? Broad? Long? Does it have a hook on its tip? So I bet just by looking at some of these shapes, you can identify. You might not know the specific species, but you know what kind of bird it is. So anyone want to guess? This one that I'm going over right now. Anyone have a guess?
It's a duck.
It's a duck. Very good. Oh, let me go back. Sorry about that. How about this one here? Has that hooked beak on it? That's some type of raptor. It's either an eagle or a hawk. This one's pretty easy. A lot of people know what this is. This is an owl. Over here, we have a woodpecker. So you start putting them into their specific genus, and then you can start looking at specifically what type of owl or what type of duck or what type of woodpecker. So the combination of size and shape is one of the most important tools to identifying. Again, a lot of people are drawn to watching birds because of their wonderful colors or their behavior sometimes. But when it comes to making identification, size and shape are the first pieces of information that you really need to look at. So I mentioned earlier the downy versus the hairy woodpecker. And if you look at them, they're almost color-wise identical. They both have a red spot on the back of their head. They both have a gray breast area with black wings with spots on them. The major difference is the hairy woodpecker is larger than the downy woodpecker. So the hairy woodpecker is on the right side and the downy is on the left side. And also the hairy woodpecker has a much bigger bill than the downy woodpecker. So again, just color sometimes can be a little bit deceiving. So you want to make sure you're looking at that size and the shape to help make that distinguish. To help you better distinguish what type of bird you're looking at. Sorry about that. Now, color is the one that most people are drawn to. It's most notable for their marks, but it's also important to notice where that color is located on the bird. Many birds are solid color, while others have a colored head or a throat or breast or the rump area right before the tail feathers. Often these colors create distinct patterns or streaks or spots. So if I'm looking at these birds, this one's probably pretty easy. Anyone know what this one is? This is our northern cardinal. Very distinguished by its crown, the crest on the top of its head, also has the red beak and the black around that beak. This is our purple finch, and this is a summer tanager. Now, these are all males of those species. When we look at the female of the species, again, I'm going to show you what birds those are. But when you look at the female of the species, do you expect them to be more colorful or less colorful?
Less.
Less colorful, you bet. So same birds, female of the species. So you have the purple finch and the northern cardinal and the summer tanager. It's really kind of unique that the female is yellow as opposed to red. So you get to learn not only the difference of colors, but help distinguish between male and female of each species. There's also something we talk about is called plumage. And this is probably a little bit more advanced than just beginning, but you need to be aware of it. Plumage refers to the layers of feathers that cover a bird and the pattern, color, or arrangement of those feathers. The pattern and colors of plumage vary distinctly between species and subspecies, and they can also vary between age classes, sexes, and season. So if you look at this European starling, you'll see this is a fledgling. This is a fairly new young bird. And then they start to, as they become adults, before they molt, they look like the center picture. And after they molt, they lose their feathers. They look like the one on the right. All the same bird, but just different ages of that bird. Another great example of this is the American goldfinch. We have these in Oklahoma, and a lot of people have seen this bird in the summer on the left. It's very striking yellow, very easy to identify, but as that starts to transition more through the summer, it starts losing that brightness and starts becoming a duller yellow. And then in the winter, it looks like this picture on the right. So again, plumage is very important, understanding what time of year you're looking at a bird. So if you're looking for an American goldfinch in the winter, you're not going to see it look like it does on the right or on the left, excuse me. It's going to look like it does on the right. So it's not near as colorful during the winter as it is during the summer. So just as ducks prefer water and robins prefer grass, most birds have specific habitats that they live in. It's important for feeding or nesting. It's important to notice where you are in that habitat that a bird is viewed. So you're not necessarily going to be looking for a duck in the middle of a forest. You're going to be looking for them around water. With that, some birds share the same habitat, but they just live in different parts. So one example is there's birds called warblers, and they all live in trees, but some live at the top of the tree, some live at the middle, some at the bottom, and some live at the inside of the tree. But habitat, all living things require four things to survive. And most of these, they'll be pretty common sense when I share them with you. So the first one is food. All living things have to have food. So birds, just like humans, have to have food. We also have to have water. We need to have shelter. So you need to have a house over your head. Birds need a habitat that provides them the shelter that they need, whether that's a tree or the grass that they live in, where they provide them shelter. And they also need space. They need areas to nest in. So just like birds, humans need these also. So Oklahoma is a pretty diverse state. A lot of people think it's pretty boring, but ecologically, we have more ecological regions than every other state except California and Texas. So we're a very diverse state. And our diversity really runs from west to east, from the panhandle to the southeast corner of our state. So in the northeast corner of our state, our eastern deciduous forests. So these are trees such as oaks and hickories and walnuts, what we call our hardwoods. So very specific habitat for very specific birds. In the southeast part of our state, we have the mixed forest. So this is our pine forests and more of our softwoods, a very mountainous region of our state. We're really blessed in Oklahoma to have, the woodlands, or what we call the cross timbers. And this is really a transition zone from the hardwoods and forests of the eastern part of the United States to the grasslands of the western United States. And running through the center of Oklahoma is called the cross timbers. A very unique area, very transitional zone for lots of species. So we'll see lots of intermixing of species there, but it also serves as a dividing line. So on the eastern side, we will have the eastern meadowlark. And on the west side of this, we have the western meadowlark. Look very similar, but very distinct birds. We also have the tall grass prairies, which are big blue stem and little blue stem and Indian grass. These are tall grasses. Then we get into the short grass prairie. If you've ever been out to western Oklahoma, the grasses don't grow very tall. But again, a very unique species. One of the few places in the only place in our state where birds like the prairie chicken survive. So they don't like very tall things. They don't like trees or tall grass. So this is neighbor to them. So if you're looking for a prairie chicken, this is where you want to go look. You don't want to look on the eastern part of our state. Then thrown within all of that, we have wetlands and ponds and lakes all over our state. Could be marshes, bogs, swamps in the southeast part of our state. Very unique habitat for birds that you want to look for. Again, understanding these habitats, you know what kind of birds you're going to find there. Again, you're not going to look for a prairie chicken in the eastern deciduous forest because they don't live there. They live in the shortgrass prairie. And you're not going to be looking for certain species in the shortgrass that live in the southeast mixed forest, such as the loggerhead shrike, which is a really cool bird. You need to look that up sometime. So once you have size and shape and color pattern and habitat down to decide the general type of bird you're looking at, you still have some things to worry about, to help look at, to help you identify that bird. Field marks are distinct stripes, spots, patterns, and highlights on a bird that they have in different abundance and variety. They develop these patterns for many reasons, but the main reason is to help them identify birds of the same species. And bird watchers use these for the same purpose. So when you dive into the world of field marks, again, that starts getting more advanced, but it helps you learn. It helps if you know the bird's anatomy. So ornithologists, people who study birds, talk about the parts of the bird by dividing it into different regions, which kind of makes sense. The main divisions are the beak or the bill, the head, the back, the throat, the breast area, the wings, tail, and the legs. And these can even be further divided. So the wings are divided into primary, secondaries, tertials, and wing coverts. Again, that's a little bit more advanced, but lots of diversity in our birds, and all of these help make bird identification a little bit easier. So what are some of the important tools that we use? Well, probably the most important that we use is binoculars. They're most important for bird watchers to own. Binoculars help magnify things and help you view it, giving you a better look at the object than you would get by the unaided eye. For birders, this helps to see field marks on birds so they can identify what species that bird is. So binoculars have left and right barrels, and in the center, there's what's called an axle. So every pair of binoculars has a prism, and prisms are what lets you correctly orient images when you're looking through the eyepieces. So that helps you to adjust for those binoculars for your eyes so you can see clearly. Binoculars, birders tend to be very specific about their binoculars, and they don't share them a lot because those binoculars are set for their eyes. If you've ever looked through a pair of binoculars that someone else is using and you've noticed they're kind of fuzzy and then you have to adjust them, well, when you give them back, then they have to adjust them back to them. There's different types of binoculars. One is called a poroprism. And if you're looking at, that would be the one on the right, and they're characterized by their eyepiece being offset from the lens. They tend to be bulkier, but they're less expensive. So a lot of beginning birders start out with a poroprism to see if birding is something that they really like. And if they do, then they will move to a roof prism. Roof prism binoculars feature lenses positioned in line, providing for more compact design. And again, they're usually more expensive than the other type. So beginning birders usually start with a poroprism, that offset binocular. And then if they really like it, they move to those roof prism and spend a little bit more money. So Oklahoma is home to lots of different birds. And as we go from left to right on your screen, we have that goldfinch. Anyone have an idea of what this bird is? This is one that's very, well, it's not unique, but we have two different species of bluebird in Wisconsin. We have the eastern bluebird and the western, or in Oklahoma, excuse me. We have the eastern bluebird and the western bluebird. Again, they're both bluebirds. They look very similar, but there are some distinct differences. This is a really colorful bird. This is called the indigo bunting. Very beautiful bird in the summer, multicolored, and many people have seen these around their bird feeders. But again, really colorful bird. This one is called the nuthatch. And we talked a little bit about behavior on birds. Nuthatches actually walk down the tree, which is kind of unique. Instead of walking up the tree, they walk down the tree. And then hopefully everyone recognizes this one. This is our state bird. This is the scissortail flycatcher. Very unique by its split tail, and very unique to the cross timbers area of Oklahoma. To help you out with birding, we've developed some modules that are available at this website, and we can get those to you, or you'll have this recording to look at. But if you get on the 4-H webpage and go to the environmental science curriculum, you'll see birding modules. There's an introduction to birding, talks about the parts of the bird, or excuse me, just birding in general, how to use your binoculars, how to correctly adjust your binoculars for your eyes. Usually on the right eyepiece of binoculars, there's something called a diopter, and that's very important for helping doing some fine focusing. There's some basic bird identification and parts of the bird. And the other thing that has become very, very popular is there's lots of apps now that you can get for birding that have bird calls, and a lot of people have been setting those to speakers to play to try and attract the bird. That in itself is not bad, but if you keep playing that over and over and over again, it can confuse birds, because if you're calling with the female to try and attract the male, they keep coming and looking and they don't see that bird. They're the female they're looking for. So there is some responsible use for those types of things. They're not bad, but just not doing it over and over again. Couple of the other resources before I stop sharing the screen and come back and share some final resources, some books that I use. The Cornell Lab of Ornithology out of Cornell University in New York is a great resource. They have lots of apps that you can download for free. They have classes that you can take on for free and or cost on certain ones if you really get into it. And there's another one called All About Birds. Some really neat resources. Final thing, again, if you want more information on birding, here's my email. It's kevin.allen@okstate.edu. Send me an email or give me a call at that number, and we'll see if we can help you out with questions or get you additional resources. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a minute. And I'm going to go to this view just so a couple other resources that I use. I got into birding about 2006 just because of colleagues of mine that are into birding, and it's just I like being outside and really being able to identify birds has just become a big interest of mine. But there's all kinds of field guides you can get. There's one on the birds of Oklahoma. And if you open it up, this has got all photographs of birds. You'll notice some of our guides, such as this one by National Geographic, they're drawings or artist renderings of birds. Most ornithologists prefer to use, or bird identification, prefer to use the drawings as opposed to, say, a picture, a photograph. Well, see if I can get it there, because photographs have light angles, or they're just not always the best true representation of what a bird should look like. National Geographic also does birding essentials. This is the one I started out with because I needed it. It's called Bird Watching for Dummies. Very basic, easy to use book for just beginning out. Just take the dummies part out, but just bird watching. It's a great resource. Everything I never learned about birds. And then there's one called Finding Your Wings. If you're really into art, or no, not the Finding Your Wings, but it's kind of just a beginning bird watching book. And there's also the Peterson's Field Guide to Color in books. So you can actually, once you identify that bird, you can actually color it yourself in this manual. Excuse me about that. So I've left a little bit of time for questions. Does anyone have questions that I can help answer, or things that you might want to know about birds? Anything you want me to cover again? It's a quiet group, Caitlin.
Yes. Well, if nobody has any questions, we can go ahead and wrap up if you don't have anything else.
Again, if you have any questions, you can send me an email at Kevin. It's KEVIN .Allen, ALLEN @okstate.edu. Oh, so what is my favorite bird? Man, I don't know if I have a favorite, Lucy. One of them that I've really become impressed with is it's called the logger-headed shrike. And it's kind of a unique bird because it actually takes its prey, and you might have seen this sometime if you've been out, and actually will put it, it'll stick it to a barbed wire fence, put it on a thorn of a tree. So you might see horned toads that have been stuck on the fence. It might be the logger-headed shrike. The other bird that really, I'm really impressed by them are the owls. I like all the owls just because of they can turn their head almost 100 or 360 degrees. They have the great big eyes to see at night. So those are probably some of my favorite birds. How about you? Anyone have a favorite bird they want to share?
I do have a question. This is a bit of a weird question, but I think this would be really cool to watch. Have you ever seen two eagles mate?
I never have. I'm not sure if they are aerial maters, which mean they mate in the air, or if they mate within their nest. That one I'm not familiar. I'm not sure about, Jonathan, but that's a great question.
I've been told that they fly really high up and then they mate in the air.
They mate in the air. I've heard that, but I can't verify that for you. But I can look it up for you and get you that answer. But an eagle is another one, especially the bald eagle. So we've all seen them, very majestic birds. You know, they're black with the white head and that gold beak, but they don't actually get there till they're about 5 or 6 years old. Their colors are constantly changing till they become an adult bird at about 5 years. So some birds, smaller birds like songbirds, which are wrens and warblers and finches, they mature in about 1 year. So they become adults and they have their adult colors in 1 year. But like the eagle, it might be 5 years before they reach that standard that we see of as the bald eagle. But great question. Anyone else? How many are coming to Roundup next week?
I'll be.
I am.
I'll be.
All right, cool. Well, we look forward to seeing you on campus. So, any other questions on birds? Well, I appreciate your time today. And again, if there's more interest that you have, make sure you send me an email, and I will get you some any information I can. So, Caitlin, with that, I guess I turn it back over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you putting on this workshop for us.
Oh, my pleasure. I love talking about birds.
Well, everybody else, this was our last workshop of the day, so you are good to log off the meeting. Thank you all for being here, and if you're coming next week, then we will see you then.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.